Okay. Hello, everybody. I haven't made a video in a number of months. The last video I made was with Robbie here when I was in Brooklyn, and he visited me there. And I think if you've been following my channel for a while, you know I do tend to make videos for a while and then pause. I never plan on doing that. I just sort of fall out of the habit, and it seemed like it was getting kind of stale in the format I was using. So I was happy to make the last video with Robbie when we were actually together in person. But
Hmm.
he's in a number of classes with me here in the academy now. And today we just happen to be just the two of us. And he reminded me I really ought to make more videos. And I've been given an idea that we're going to follow through and do a video here. So he's going to help me by asking questions about an idea that we were given by a fellow student of his, a guy named Sean Dent. He should get the credit for this new format if this works very well. And so what Sean recommended that I do is, again, I think many of you might know, I've been making videos here on YouTube on and off for going on 20 years. I was here from almost the very beginning. But even before that, I wrote a lot of posts for this forum called How to Learn Any Language. I think maybe I have to move us aside to see that, How to Learn Any Language, which is still up
Hmm.
there. And a lot of people have said that the first way they got to know me was by some of the posts that I put here. And so what Sean recommended that I do is I revisit some of these um, posts that people have told me are valuable over the years, and I sort of go over them and we see if I need to update them or do anything with them. And I do indeed. I'm showing you a post right now. It's got a title about what is it? Russian advancing to reading literature, but it's not particularly about Russian. It was just in that context, and it's about advancing to developing skills in reading literature. Robbie is here. He's in my Spanish literature class. He's doing great there. He's also learning Arabic and Sanskrit. He's getting there to reading literature, but these are very relevant questions to you. So please, Robbie, sometimes you're too quiet. You don't ask enough questions. Speak up. Ask
Yes,
questions.
that's true.
As,
I'll try to speak up.
okay,
I'll try to speak up.
as we go through this. But this post here is something that a number of people over the years have said that they kind of review this post as kind of a silver bullet. It's very, very helpful to them in terms of like how to go about developing the ability to read, I guess, particularly in a relatively hard language like Russian, but I do think this is applicable to everything. So I talked about, this is back to 2005, I talked about a number of steps that I used for Russian in particular, a couple of years before this, but that I would also sort of prescribe and talk about and use in other things. So again, Sean recommended sort of read through this and talk about what I would update. And now I'm very glad to have Robbie here with me because he's going to ask questions as we go along and I'll get some more details. So in this post, I talked about 4 steps that I would use to really start reading to learn to read a language that's different. So I talked about the first step being to use actual bilingual text. So you have a target language on one page and a translation on the facing page. And in this stage, I said I would keep one index finger under one sentence and the other under its counterpart on the opposite page. And I would slowly and carefully compare everything as I'm reading. I'd say I'm not really reading at this point, but rather analyzing the language using interesting reading matter. So that's good as far as it goes, but I feel like I'm giving that short shrift. What I'm doing here is I'm sort of saying, we happen to have, Rob's in the Arabic class, we've got like an Asimil book here, and this is the same idea. This is not a work of literature, but this is bilingual text. So the same way you would use this, and the same way I've talked about using Asimils in various ways, I wouldn't just do this one stage. This would be 1.1 would be to everybody who likes my videos likes Merlin. Here's Merlin. Okay, he is here. 1.1 would be this here, but I would also sort of go 1.2, 1.3. I don't know how many substages there would be, but you can go past just looking and analyzing, but also saying, well, then I'm going to take a certain point where I could say, well, it's still really hard for me to read, but if I read the translation and then I read the original language right away, then I can follow it and understand it. And then you can flip it around and say, I can read the original language and then check my understanding with the translation and go this way. And then maybe 1.4 would be to say, I'm going to read the original and I'm only going to look over here if I need to, if I check it. So yeah, this first step of using actual bilingual text is good, what I wrote back then. But I would put a number of other subsets together with that. So that would be step one. Robbie, have you read this post in the past? Have you looked at this, or what do you think of this when you hear this?
I was one of those people who first found you through this form, and you can see the date on this post is back in 2005.
Right.
So that's what, 18 years ago? I may
Exactly.
have read this back then, but
Uh-huh.
I can't quite remember it. But I'm very curious to hear about it.
Yeah. Okay. Actually, just a second. I took some notes on what I wanted to say, so I want to make sure I had this here. Wasn't ready for us to do this. Okay, we got that. Okay, that would be step
No
one.
worries.
Good. Step two, I wrote here back in 2005. I don't see any real point in sort of updating or changing this. I said the second step is to use readers, and I put that in quotes for people who don't know. These are books that have contain annotated excerpts of literature, maybe a short story or passage, and you've got notes at the bottom or maybe in the back, and most importantly, you have in vocabulary that is keyed directly to it, okay, and the text. So it's really designed to help you read this text, read this Unthink's words. So I would say that, yes, finding the meaning of unknown words much easier than by using a regular dictionary. And more importantly, I wrote here too, I usually make enlarged photocopies of the text first, and then I write the meaning of all the new words directly under them in the spaces underneath them, both in the index, maybe other things I look up. And then I would read and reread these texts many times. So I've got big blown up pages of these things, so it's easier to see. I sort of make my own interlinear text. So that would be the second stage that I would use to do that. So I wouldn't change or update this very much, but I'm wondering, you got any thoughts or questions about that?
I can't say that I have any questions. I feel like it's slowly going from not knowing anything to being able to read a native piece of literature in the language, which is something that I'm always aiming for.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's, related to that concept you have about peeling the onion,
Mm-hmm.
going deeper and deeper into the language as you increase your knowledge in it.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so I would for step one, I would make it like 1.1234. Like I said, the additional thing. Step two is pretty much fine. 18 years later, I wouldn't update that terribly much. Step three looks pretty short. I said the third step is to begin reading easy literature unaided. So material for native children or adolescents. And I would let that stand, but I would also say that maybe with a bit more experience now, those books aren't always so easy if they have a lot of cultural background or expectations or something there. So, but in general, yes, if they're aimed at people who have not developed a higher reading level, those would probably be easier things to read. I guess what I would add here is I'm seeing in this time period, as you all know, probably I've always majored in literature and I sort of prioritize reading literature. But looking at this, I'm thinking if I can be a bit more broad, here I'm looking at developing your vocabulary to read, period, to read other things. So I would go beyond literature and I'd say, well, another thing that you could read at this stage that would, be easier would be nonfiction, a history book, something where you can really follow and you sort of understand this something. So I would say that apart from easy literature might be, yeah, things about a subject that a nonfiction book. And then also at this stage, back 18 years ago, I don't know why I didn't put this here. Maybe I was just thinking, okay, we want to get to the target language. But I would also say that another thing that I might categorize as easy here would be um, a book that might have been originally written in, say, your language, in English, that then got translated into, here we're talking about Russian. So you could say, I know this book, I've read this book many times, and I like this book, and now I'm going to look at it in the Russian translation. So I'm not reading Russian literature or whatever target literature I'm trying to read, but I'm developing my ability to read, developing my vocabulary. So yeah, step three, I would say is easy texts, which could be children, adolescents, could be nonfiction, could be something translated into the language. So yeah, those are my thoughts on how I might update the third step. Questions, comments, thoughts, Robbie?
Yeah, you know, it reminds me that in the Arabic class at the Language Academy, we're going over the Sinbad story, but it's
Hmm.
written for, I guess, children or adolescents. And I
Adolescence.
love that so
Hmm.
much. Adolescents, okay.
Hmm.
I love that so much because although it is an easier language, it's still for native speakers. And it's always such a great feeling to be reading real material. I also like your idea of reading nonfiction, such as history, because I remember in one of the other language academy classes, we went over Catalan
Hmm.
and we were investigating that. And we read a piece, I think it was on the history of the Catalan language. And it was easier to understand that because it was nonfiction.
Hmm. Good, good. All right. Now what I write. The fourth step is what I described in an earlier post. That must have been in 2004. You remember that? I don't. uh, namely, not using bilingual texts, but using an original text and a translation in tandem. So first you read a portion of the translation, and then you read the original itself. What portion? If all I can handle is a paragraph or a page at a time, then I guess I should still keep working with the bilingual text. Yeah, I'd stand with that. At this stage, as I wrote before, it's initially best to read a full chapter at a time. I guess that depends on how long the chapter is. We're reading Sobre Héroes y Tumbas, and we've got some chapters that are one page, one sentence, and we've got, what are we reading now? Like an 80-page chapter. So I guess it depends
Yes,
on that.
very long.
Um, it would depend on the length. At first, I may have to read them back to back, but I find it's better not to do so ultimately, but to read the original later in the day. So you don't want to just be like, um, yeah, okay, I just read it and now I have it, but sort of like I'm sort of letting it percolate in my brain. I have the knowledge of the story. The whole purpose here is to know the content of the text. I guess what I'm getting at here is we want to go stretch that we've talked about in other videos, extensive reading. You need to have a very high range of vocabulary to get that. But if you know the content already, you don't need that such a high range. So this is the purpose of this. So yeah, rather than reading them back to back, somehow have the knowledge in your head. And then eventually I read the entire translated work first and then the original. That's again, that kind of depends on your memory and how long the original is, how long the text is. But I never use a dictionary at this stage, but just keep on reading. That's the whole purpose. We want to go beyond, looking things up, so to sort of jumpstart extensive reading, as it were. So then I wrote with Russian. I went through most of Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, Turgenev, and Chekhov in this way, as well as some of Oblomov and Gogol. That makes it sound like I said I read of everything these guys wrote. I certainly didn't. I meant the books that I read of these people, most of them I did in this fashion. I then passed the airplane test, as I call it, taking a novel I had not read in translation before with me as my sole companion on an intercontinental flight and reading it with interest, enjoyment, and understanding. That's true. I did ultimately get to the point where I was able to do that in numerous languages. And that's a really nice feeling when you're just totally involved, totally engaged in the text. So, yeah, I would just sort of qualify this one here again, just so taking more into account, how long is the chapter, how long is the book? All of that would play definitely into how you might approach this. Do you have any comments or thoughts about what I just said now or the original writing?
Yeah, I think it's so interesting the idea of getting the content into you through your native language first and then going to your target language. Because I think a lot of people, myself
Mhm.
included, what we would think to do is go straight to the target language text and then go word by word. And when we found the word that we didn't know, we would look it up in the dictionary and then keep going on like that. But
Mhm.
this is another way to get at the meaning of the content
Mhm.
is to know it first in English and then go to your target language and see the words there. I feel
Mhm.
that's more a natural way of
Mhm.
getting the content into.
Yep. And what you described is exactly the way I learned. I was trained how to read literature in universities. I mean, that's the standard way. You kind of want to get a cursory in as much grammar as you can. Just you're anxious to get to the original text, and so you jump right into texts that are frankly too hard for you, and you can't really appreciate them. You don't know what you're looking up, and you spend so much time looking things up in a dictionary and then forgetting things. So that's why I wrote, let me talk about the next paragraph, okay? Remember that now. I can't stress strongly
Okay.
how important it is to avoid using a dictionary until you've gotten past these stages. Doing so harms you more than it helps you, for it slows you down too much and breaks your concentration. I've always found that using a dictionary is only profitable after I've gotten past this fourth step. Again, I generally try to look up only known unknowns, that is, words that I've seen often enough to recognize them. There's that damn word again. What the hell does it mean? Or even better, actually remember them and say to myself, not necessarily while reading, but simply while ruminating, I know that I don't know what X means. Seems like it means such and such, but I wonder. And then when you finally look it up, I don't forget it. So, but if I look at a dictionary too early, then I just remember what would always happen to me in that stage of reading in university. I find myself looking up the same word repeatedly. Oh, I look it up again and again and again. So it's always seemed to me that, as I put here, that dictionaries are really advanced tools, and they're put in the hands of beginners, and they don't belong. They belong more in the hands of advanced tools. But I guess here I'm really talking about autodidactic learning, as if you don't have any context for of something. But like where you are in the Spanish literature course, I would nuance this and say that like we do, and please fill in. I said we're going to read the next 3 or 4 chapters for next time, so please prepare them ahead of time. Read them a couple of times, and then we'll come and read and discuss them there. So I would say that this advice is for reading on your own, then trying to get this going as soon as possible. But if you have the opportunity to be in a discussion circle, then you know what the context is going. Then I guess it's helpful to read the same text, the same couple of chapters, the same things a couple of times. You read it one time this way, and then maybe you read it again, and you can pencil in the words that are blocking you, and then you can take a look at it and say, well, there's 15 or 20 words I don't know on this page, but 3 or 4 of them are really impeding my understanding. The others are adjectives. It'd be nice to know them, but they're not really stopping me. So I'm going to look up the ones that are really stopping me from understanding, and then I can discuss and understand it. So I would nuance this a little way, that way. So can you talk about that, and particularly in light of again how we do it in the literature classes that you're in?
Yeah, I really like this approach of like wading deeper and deeper into the water of the target language, because I think a lot of the time we have the mindset, oh, I have to understand 100% of everything before I can move on to the next thing. So I have to understand every word in this sentence until I can move on to the next sentence. But actually, I think it's more wholesome to take a few passes at the text, read it one time. Maybe you could do it in your native language to get the content in, then you read it in your target language. And then the third time you read it again, this time maybe taking more time to look up words that you don't know.
Mhm. Good, good. So I think that's this whole post. That again, lots of people have told me over the years and other contexts that this was very valuable to them, and I'm glad to know that. But as I look at this now, I would edit it and add a few more things and do some other things. As I just said, there's also 2 other things I'm looking at this, and that I would add, and we're already doing these both exactly in the literature class that you're in. I did not mention in this post the use of something that I don't think was really possible back then. Audiobooks. Audiobooks are an
Mm.
integral part of reading and listening, but in all seriousness, precisely with Russian. When I was in St. Petersburg doing a family homestay, I think it was in the year 2000 or 1999, I wanted to get some audiobooks, and they weren't generally available. I had to find some special association for blind people, and I had to get some special permission to buy them because they didn't like just sell them to the general public. They were like made and produced and given to blind people, and then some foreigner comes in and wants to buy them. So I did get a couple, but yeah, audiobooks now are all over the place, and they're really invaluable. So definitely I would add to this 4th stage It might even be a fifth stage. It might even something to do is, when you can look at it and you say, well, maybe I can, take this novel in my foreign language, in Russian or Spanish, whatever I'm trying to read, and I can read it with my eyes. And if I'm already trained in shadowing, can get my brain wrapped around it, I can listen to it in the target language. And so I'm reading it and I'm hearing it and seeing a translation. So it's sort of like watching a movie with subtitles, but reading a movie with subtitles. And you can also flip that around and do it the other way. You can listen to it in the original and read the translation, or you can listen, if you have an audiobook, in the translation and read the original. So using audiobooks in this fashion or an adjacent would be very good to do that. But then apart from using audiobooks, exactly as we do in the discussion circles, now I would say, I don't know why I didn't mention this at this point. Maybe I also didn't do it as much as I should have back then. Just reading aloud, the act of reading aloud. When I say, and that can be done at any of these stages, okay? Instead of just reading silently in your head, reading aloud helps you really understand and process and retain the information a lot more. So that's why I emphasize, and that's what we do in our circles here, right? So can you talk about because we have used audiobooks now, and also we do a lot of reading aloud. So can you talk about how that's working for you?
Yeah, before you suggested, I never used audiobooks in my target language. Yeah, I never did anything with listening to books. But now that I've been doing it, for the novel we're reading in the Spanish Literature Circle, Sobre Héroes y Tumbas, it's such a great thing because I think a lot of us, we tend to focus too much on reading and we get really good at reading, but then maybe our listening skills are not up to par. And being able to listen to an audiobook is a great way, not just to hear the language, but hear it in a live form, a
Mm-hmm.
form that's real. And
Mm-hmm.
that's so great. One of the techniques that you mentioned that I like a lot, and maybe this is a more advanced technique, is you can read your target language, but then listen to the audiobook in another language that maybe you know better. So
Mm-hmm.
that way you can use multiple languages that you're studying to learn at the same time.
Absolutely. So yeah, if on the off chance you can find in your case, if you could find a Spanish audio translation of Najib Mahfouz's novels, you can read the Arabic with your eyes and listen to the Spanish with your head. Obviously, keeping yourself anchored, you do need to know the language as well. That's not an easy thing to do, but yes, it is, as you said, it's an advanced technique, and that is something that definitely I did employ. Not with Russian, but with Arabic. I did listen to multiple audio, but I had like an Arabic text and I listened to it in some other language, and just keeping yourself anchored. But yeah, you're kind of reading along, and you have to sort of get your mind to connect and disconnect with what the anchoring, as I would call it, to keep yourself at the right point. That can be kind of tricky, but if you can do that, then that, like I said, it's sort of akin to watching a movie with subtitles, and eventually you forget that you're reading along or you're listening, and you just sort of take in the content of the movie. And I think that this is a way you can take in the content of the book, because absolutely learning how to read a language like Russian or Arabic, or any language that has a totally different set of vocabulary, is a major hurdle. And I suspect we've done it long since, both you and I, but probably learning how to read your first foreign language, even if it has a lot of similar vocabulary. Learning how to read Spanish, if it's your
Mm.
first language when you haven't done it before, is probably these same steps could be very helpful. So that is my sort of update of this post from 2005. With great thanks to Sean Dent, give him full credit for putting forth the idea. And again, that's sort of been percolating on my back burner, but I just happened to be talking to Robbie, and he also mentioned, you got to make more videos. And I said, well, you helped me with the last
Yes.
one, you helped me with this one, and he did. So thanks to Robbie and thanks to Sean. I'm going to put this out there, and I really hope that this is helpful to anybody who's interested in learning how to read in foreign languages, because there's really nothing more pleasurable and rewarding than being able to do that. When you get to the point, be it passing this airplane test, or just, sitting back in a chair with a cat in your lap, and just relaxing, and you're able to read a book in a language that's not your own, that you've taught yourself, you've learned yourself, and you can appreciate the culture and the literature. That's just incredibly rewarding. Wouldn't you agree, Robbie?
Oh, I agree 100%. It's the best feeling.
Yep. Okay. So we've got you doing that with Spanish. We're going to get you doing that with Arabic and Sanskrit in short order, and then we'll add some more languages. But I guess that's
Okay, thank
that's
you.
enough for this here for today. So thanks for joining me again, and for
Of course.
giving me the impetus to get this out there. And I hope that this is useful knowledge for everybody who watches this.
I think it will be. Of
Okay. Thank you.
course.